Hello, it's day 20, and I want to talk about food rules. I was inspired to talk about food rules today by an activity in this intuitive eating workbook. I have been flipping through the workbook, not regularly by any means, and I haven't been going through it page by page. I've kind of been just opening it to a random page and just selectively reading a couple sections. So the section I want to go through today is the section on food rules. I thought it was very interesting because as I went through it, I realized that I do have a lot of food rules that I've imposed on myself either in the past or presently. This book lists out 15 food rules, and the whole idea is you go through this list and you say yes or no. Yes if it was a rule that you've set, no if it isn't. Intuitive eating is really all about breaking down the diet mentality, making you think about the processes that you go through in your brain to justify eating something or to restrict yourself from eating it. So I thought the food rules section was it was definitely interesting to go through, and I wanted to go through it with you guys now, simply because it's something that I didn't think about. Like, if you think about the brainwashing card that I went through with you yesterday, those reasons for losing weight, it's good to think about those reasons, but it's also very interesting to examine some of the rules that we put on ourselves. And I was really surprised to find that I could answer yes to almost every one of these food rules. So again, without further ado, let's just start right in. So the page, it's page 96 if you want to look at it yourself in this book. The heading at the top of the page says, what are your food rules? Number 1, do you count anything? Calories, fat, carbs, protein points, and so forth. Yes, I do. I have, in the past, counted calories, and I had success losing weight when I counted calories. I've never really counted fat, carbs, or protein. And the points, I believe points comes from the Weight Watchers system, which I've never taken part in. But yeah, calories, the chronometer that I'm using right now with my dad, you count calories. So yes, I do count calories. This book really makes it out that diets are damaging and something to put away, like put it in your past. Don't ever do it, don't ever think about it. But I really don't think that there's that much harm, at least for me personally, in counting calories. It doesn't upset me, it doesn't trigger me. You know what does trigger me though? Intuitive eating. Okay, number 2, do calories determine how much you eat? Yes and no. I do have a set calorie limit. For instance, in Chronometer, I have it set up to where I would like to lose 1 to 1.5 pounds a week. So that means Chronometer has given me a range of about 1,500 to 1,200 calories to eat in. However, I don't always restrict myself to that amount of calories. For instance, on the weekends, I've just been trying to eat for maintenance. So I just eat at my TD, which is about 2,000-ish calories, maybe 2,100. I don't know, I'd have to look in the app to find out. So that one, I'm going to say yes because I do tend to try to stick to what Chronometer recommends for me to lose weight, but it's by no means a hard and fast rule for me. Number 3, do you feel you have to eat perfectly to be a healthy eater? No. This one's a no for me. I do not feel like I have to absolutely be perfect to be healthy. I think perfection is not something that anyone should strive for because there's no way you can possibly get to it. I do think that at some point you have to look yourself in the eye and say, here is where I'm going to compromise. I think everybody has a breakdown with a sack of M&Ms at some point in their life. Okay, number 4. Do you have any rules about what time of day is okay to eat? Not currently. I used to, definitely. For example, in my past, I told myself that I can only eat sweets after dinner. I think that's a very common one for most people. But not so much anymore. Like today, for example, it's my day off. So I ate a relatively good breakfast. I haven't had dinner yet, but for lunch I had a piece of cake. But I kind of look at it like I really wanted the cake and I would have eaten it anyway. If I were restricting to only eating sweets after dinner, that means I would have eaten breakfast, lunch, dinner, and cake. But the way it's going to be today, I ate breakfast, cake, and dinner. So ultimately, like if we're doing calorie counting, ultimately I actually broke even today, even with the cake. So make of that what you will. I really haven't been restricting what time of day is okay to eat. I think this one might also mean some diets have rules where like you can't eat after 7 or you can't eat before noon. Those are a couple that I've heard of, and I've never done that. I've never restricted like time on a clock. Do you have any rules about snacking? That's number 5. Yes, I do. I would love to get to the point where I do not raid the candy shelf at work. I do not even want it anymore, but I feel like I have to eat it because it's there. It's taunting me. That candy shelf is my nemesis. And yes, I do have rules about snacking. Don't eat from the candy shelf, but I can't stop, at least not at this point. Number 6, are there any foods that you try to avoid? Yes, I try to avoid sweets. I try to avoid processed flour as much as possible. I try to avoid sugary drinks when at all possible. I don't think that's bad. I think most people are trying to avoid those things because they make me feel gross. They make me feel bad. They almost make me a little sick in a way. Number 7, do you have any rules about knowing the nutrition content of a meal or food? Oh, that's a hard one. I'm gonna say yes. One of the things that bothered me so much about the calorie counters that I used to use is that I couldn't figure out which entry was the correct one, the most correct one. So yes, I do like to know the calorie content of a meal before I eat it. I like to put it into the calorie counter before I eat it. So I'm gonna say yes. Number 8, do you eat differently if there are other people present? Yes, absolutely. I eat much, much less if I'm at a party or if I'm at a social event. Because I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed by how much I eat on a typical day. Number 9, do you compare what you eat to what other people are eating? Yes, but again, not in the way that I think most people do. I look around a table at other people's plates to judge where I should be in a meal. I eat way too fast. I gulp down my food because in the past there were people in my life who really judged me for what I ate. So I would try to eat as fast as possible to get away from that person as fast as I could, just to avoid the teasing and the stress and the just cruelty of oh my god, you are eating so much. Wow, are you still eating? Wow, look at her shovel it in. So yeah, really bad memories from my childhood there. So yes, I do compare myself to what other people are eating. I try to slow down to eat about as fast as the people around me. That's very hard to do though, because I still don't feel safe eating with other people. I like to eat in private. That's when I do most of my overeating, secretly, in my room. Number 10, do you have any rules around beverages? Yes. I mentioned before in the past my rule about Mountain Dew. I would only drink it on Fridays. These days I have rules about coffee. I try to drink 1 cup a day, but at the maximum 2. So yes, I do have rules about drinks. Number 11, do you have any rules around exercise and eating? No. I, weirdly enough, have never really linked my exercise to my eating. Like in Chronometer, I don't even put my exercise in. To me, it's not something that I track in that way. I don't track calories burned. I don't even really care about it all that much. I just like exercise for the way it makes me feel. So no, I don't feel like I have an unhealthy link between food and exercise. Number 12, do you believe that carbs should be limited? Yes, I do. But that's simply because I think that my body functions better if I eat fewer carbs. Carbs make me swell up and retain water. It makes me bloated and gassy. So yeah, I do try to limit carbs. Number 13, do you think that sweets should be avoided? Not avoided, but like I said, that candy shelf at work, if I could avoid that thing, like if I could just get away from it, yeah, I would. I would launch that shelf into outer space if I could. I wish I could get rid of that. But it's so weird, that shelf, because like my coworkers can just go up and like take one little snack pack off of it and just be good for the day. But me, like I really have to stop myself from embarrassing myself with that candy shelf at work. 14, do you weigh or measure your food? I think they mean a food scale here, although they're not clear. We do have a food scale, and I use it sometimes for certain things, but I don't use it every time. A lot of times if I'm eating a new food and they say the serving size is 100 grams, I'll weigh out 100 grams just so I can get a look at it and see what 100 grams looks like. But then I won't ever weigh it again. I'll just eyeball 100 grams, or 200 or 300, depending on how hungry I am. Do I measure my food? Does calorie counting count? Because yes, if it does. 15, do you have a list of safe foods to eat? Yes, I think I do. But again, not in the sense that they're talking about. They mean like foods that feel safe, as in they're like they fit comfortably into your diet. And I mean safe as in foods that I know aren't going to make me sick. So that is the list of food rules that they have put down. So, like I said, I can answer yes or maybe to most of them. I do have some unique rules. On the next page, they have another interesting section. This is the last section I'm going to go through for today. But it's called Your Family's Food Rules. It says, your family's beliefs have a powerful influence on forming your belief system. Even if their intentions are entirely positive, many parents raise their kids with rules about what's okay and what's not okay to eat. It's important to get a sense of these rules from your childhood, their degree of rigidity, and how they might still be affecting you. My family has had rules in the past. Unfortunately, I was a child who was trained with food. Food was used as a reward for me, and as I grew up, I continued that with myself. I use food as a reward, and I'm trying to break that habit as much as possible. And also, like I said, I had a member of my family who was a very harsh judge of how heavy I was and how much I ate. I don't think I'll ever get away from the feeling of being ridiculed at every meal. Counterintuitively, instead of making me eat less, that really savage judgment, it ended up making me eat more. Like, as fat as I was, as fat as I knew I was, thanks to this person who never let me forget it, I used food to comfort myself, to make myself feel better. So there are food rules from my family. And I know that I've got the information in here in quarantine, but that's something that I really have to consider, I think. It's something I haven't really thought about in a long time, but the fact that I comfort myself with food and reward myself with food, it's something that I'm going to have to outgrow if I want to make more progress this year. I would challenge you to look at any food rules that you have, but I would also caution you that even though this book makes it seem like food rules are very harmful and something that you should get rid of, I think that there are some food rules that you really have to keep in place if you're going to be healthy. For instance, if I eat too many carbs, my performance, my thought, my brain gets all foggy. I just don't feel very good. So I'm not going to throw out that rule just because intuitive eating has told me to. But I do think that there are some things that I need to rethink or at least challenge. So if there's something like that in your life, something that you feel like you need to rethink, take all the time you need to think about it, because as I've been discovering, you can't make changes overnight. But you know what? The sooner you start making those changes, the better off you'll be.